I'm Rick with Rick's Restorations in Las Vegas, and I'm the guy that can restore anything. The pawn guys have been bringing me things for years, and they're trying to stump me one way or the other, and it still hasn't happened.
Behind the scenes, Rick Dales's reality is far more complicated than whatever you might have guessed. For 6 seasons, Rick Dale walked into his Las Vegas workshop, picked up broken and forgotten pieces of American history, and turned them into something beautiful. Millions of people watched every week and fell in love with the process, the family, and the man at the center of it all. Then, in 2016, the History Channel brought back American Restoration without him, and Rick Dale simply vanished from television. No explanation, no farewell, just gone. The story of what actually happened, before the firing and after it, is one that most fans have never fully heard. The kid who learned from a dumpster bicycle. Rick Dale was a child from a family that did not have a lot of money, and a father who had a talent for finding value in things that other people had thrown away. He described his childhood as genuinely impoverished in a way that shaped how he saw the world around him. His parents could not afford to buy new things, and when gifts were needed, they came from wherever they could be found. The moment he has pointed to most often when talking about how his career began was when he was 9 years old, and his father pulled a bicycle out of a neighborhood dumpster. Rick took it apart, figured out what was broken, fixed it, and had a working bicycle. Something about that process, the idea that something discarded could become something useful again through patience and attention, stayed with him in a way that nothing else from his childhood quite managed. He developed his skills through years of hands-on work rather than formal training, taking on restoration projects throughout the 1980s to help pay his bills. Vintage Coca-Cola machines were among his earliest regular projects. He had an eye for the particular kind of decay that had potential underneath it, and he had the patience to do the slow work that transformation actually required. He opened Rick's Restorations as a proper business in Las Vegas, building a reputation in the city's collector and antique community before anyone in television had any reason to pay attention to what he was doing. He had also, by this point in his life, already experienced the kind of personal upheaval that forces a person to start over completely. He had been married before to Kelly, the woman who would become his partner on television as well as in life, and he had a son named Tyler from that first marriage. He closed the shop once in 1993 following a personal life change, which is as much detail as he has publicly shared about that period, and then rebuilt it from scratch. That ability to take something that had collapsed and put it back together again, which was the literal skill his career was built on, had already been tested once in his own personal life before the cameras ever arrived. But nobody outside of Las Vegas knew any of this yet. The thing that changed that came from a pawn shop a few miles away. So how exactly did a man who restored vending machines end up with his own television show? How Pawn Stars built the bridge to television. The History Channel launched Pawn Stars in 2009, and it became one of the most watched cable programs of its era almost immediately. The show followed Rick Harrison and his family at their gold and silver pawn shop in Las Vegas, and part of what made it compelling was the parade of unusual and often historically significant items that came through the door on a weekly basis. Some of those items needed to be assessed by specialists, some needed to be repaired, and some needed to be restored to a condition that would reflect their actual worth. Rick Harrison began bringing items to Rick Dale at Rick's Restorations, and the camera crew came along. Dale appeared in 10 episodes of Pawn Stars across the first 3 seasons, restoring items including vending machines, gas pumps, barber chairs, motorcycles, and jukeboxes. Harrison described Dale's work publicly as miraculous, calling him a certified miracle worker. The relationship between the two shops became part of the fabric of the show, and it gave viewers a glimpse into a world of craftsmanship and patience that sat alongside the faster-paced deal-making energy of the pawn shop. The History Channel's production team watched what was happening and reached a conclusion. There was a show inside Rick's restorations that was not being told. The craft, the family dynamics, the particular drama of taking something broken and working backward through time to understand what it had been before bringing it back to life, this was material that could carry its own program. Rick Dale did not immediately want to do it. He has said in interviews that the idea of an entire show built around restoring vending machines and gas pumps did not seem like something with obvious broad appeal. He was not thinking about himself as a television personality. He was thinking about the work, and the work was specific and slow and sometimes unglamorous. The production team convinced him that the work was exactly the point, and that there was an audience ready to appreciate it. He eventually agreed to try it. What followed was one of the most consistently popular reality shows the History Channel produced during the peak era of vintage Americana programming. And for 6 seasons, it all went exactly the way the production team had promised it would. So what changed? And why did the man who had built the show into what it was find himself watching Season 7 from the outside? 6 seasons of success and the firing nobody explained. American Restoration premiered on the History Channel in 2010 and became an immediate hit, riding the wave of interest in vintage Americana that Pawn Stars had helped to create. The format was straightforward. Rick and his team at the Las Vegas shop would take in projects, ranging from classic cars and motorcycles to slot machines, jukeboxes, neon signs, gas pumps, and barber chairs, and restore them to a condition that honored what they had originally been. The range of objects gave the show a variety that kept it fresh season after season, and the family dynamic at the center of it gave viewers characters to follow, as well as craft to admire. At its peak, the show attracted celebrity clients, including musicians Billy Joel, Sammy Hagar, and Jason Mraz, NASCAR driver Greg Biffle, and illusionists David Copperfield and Lance Burton. Crossover episodes brought the teams from Pawn Stars and American Pickers into the shop. The show aired internationally under the title Kings of Restoration and reached audiences in countries including the United Kingdom, Australia, India, and across Asia. For a program about a small shop in Las Vegas restoring old machines, the footprint it developed was genuinely remarkable. The shop itself, located at 800 West Mesquite Avenue in Las Vegas, became a tourist attraction during the show's run. Fans paid to be shown around the yard full of antiques and works in progress. The combination of television exposure and physical accessibility created a business that was partly a restoration shop, partly a museum, and partly a piece of living entertainment that people could visit and walk through. Then, in 2016, when History Channel announced Season 7 of American Restoration, Rick Dale and his entire crew were not in it. The new season featured 5 different restoration shops from around the country, with a completely new cast and a fundamentally different concept. Rick Dale was not included, and no explanation was given publicly by either the network or Dale himself. He posted a video asking fans to visit the American Restoration website and register their feelings about the change, but he did not specify what had happened or why the format had been restructured so completely. The version of what happened depends on who is telling it and what they were willing to say on the record. The most widely reported version is that the show's ratings had been declining during the later seasons, and the network decided a fresh concept with multiple shops was more likely to bring viewers back than continuing with Rick's restorations. There is also an account circulated in online forums and backed by people who claim to have direct knowledge of the situation that Rick Dale himself was unwilling to renew his contract under the conditions being offered, and that the network had grown frustrated with how the show had been operating. The specific terms of whatever disagreement existed between Dale and the History Channel have never been publicly detailed by either party. What is clear is that the show did not survive the change. Season 7, which featured 5 shops instead of Rick's restorations, failed to find the audience that the original format had built. The History Channel canceled American Restoration shortly after that 7th season aired. The reboot had been intended to revive something that was losing momentum. Instead, it confirmed that the thing making the show work had been Rick Dale and his family the whole time. So once the show was gone, what happened to the shop? And what did the man who had spent 6 years turning history back into something functional do when the cameras stopped coming? The shop that could not survive without the television platform. Rick's restorations did not continue after the show ended. The closure was not immediate, but it was inevitable. During the show's run, the production company covered the cost of the restorations that were filmed for each episode. Rick and his crew were paid per episode rather than per job, which meant the economics of running the large facility at Mesquite Avenue were underwritten by the television deal in a way that the shop's actual restoration revenue could never have matched on its own. The location was expensive to operate. The crew was large. The visitor traffic that generated additional revenue was driven almost entirely by the show's ongoing popularity and the publicity that came with it. When the show ended, all of those support structures disappeared at the same time. When the cameras disappeared, the money and publicity vanished with them. The tourist traffic that depended on people knowing the shop was there and wanting to see it for themselves dropped dramatically when the show was no longer on the air to remind millions of viewers that it existed. The overhead that had been manageable during the television years became quickly unmanageable without the platform. The building at 800 West Mesquite Avenue, which had been one of the most photographed commercial locations in Las Vegas during the show's peak years, was repurposed into a multi-tenant commercial and medical hub after Rick's restorations vacated it. The space now houses businesses including a plasma donation service and clinical pathology laboratories, which is about as far from a vintage restoration shop as a commercial space can get. The physical disappearance of the shop is as complete as the disappearance from television, and the location that fans once paid to visit is now essentially unrecognizable. Rick's Restorations has not reopened. There have been rumors at various points that it might come back in some form, and fans have speculated online about the possibility of a revival. But none of those rumors have produced any concrete announcements. The shop, as it existed during the show's run, is gone permanently. And the crew that had built it alongside Rick scattered in directions that said a great deal about who each of them actually was underneath the television version of their characters. So what happened to the family and the team that viewers had watched for 6 years? Where the cast went when the cameras left. The family and crew members who had appeared regularly on American Restoration each took their own path after the show ended, and the variety of those paths is genuinely interesting. Kelly Dale, Rick's wife, and the woman who had managed the administrative and financial operation of Rick's restorations throughout the show's run, built a successful independent career as a real estate agent in the Las Vegas area. She had always been the operational brain behind the business, handling payroll, marketing, customer relations, and financial reporting, while Rick focused on the craft. That combination of organizational ability and knowledge of a market translated well into real estate, and she is described in reports as a top-producing agent in the area. Tyler Dale, Rick's son from his first marriage, who had worked in the shop since he was 2 years old, and who Rick had publicly hoped would one day take over the business, stepped back from the restoration world after the show ended. He did not take over Rick's restorations because Rick's restorations no longer existed to be taken over. Brett Lee Otterman, Rick's stepson, who had appeared regularly on the show, built his own business in Las Vegas doing mobile media blasting, which is a specialist cleaning and surface preparation technique used on vehicles and other metal objects. He lives with his wife and 3 children in Las Vegas and has remained in the general automotive services space that the show introduced him to. Ron Dale, Rick's younger brother who had served primarily as a picker on the show, traveling around Nevada to find items worth restoring, stepped completely out of public life and now builds custom bicycles. He has no visible social media presence and has given no public interviews since the show ended. Kyle Astorga, who had handled the disassembly and reassembly work in the shop, left the restoration industry entirely and became a hunter and outfitter, working across more than 45,000 acres of land in New Mexico's Cimarron Valley. And Cowboy, the crew member whose rugged presence made him one of the more distinctive faces on the show, has not maintained any public social media profile since the show ended, and his current whereabouts are genuinely unknown to anyone outside his personal life. The dispersal of the crew in these different directions captures something important about what the show actually was during its run. It was a real family business that a television opportunity had expanded beyond its natural size, and when the television opportunity ended, the business returned to something closer to its natural state, which meant it was no longer large enough to sustain everyone who had been part of it at its peak. So, what Rick Dale is actually doing now? The future of the genius behind American restoration. Rick Dale himself has not returned to television in any significant way since the American restoration era ended. He has remained active on social media and has maintained a public presence. But the days of a Las Vegas restoration shop with a full crew and a camera crew following him around are not something he has sought to recreate. He and Kelly run a business called My Best Font Forward LLC, focused on custom laser-cut metal art, personalized embroidery, and custom gifts. The business is smaller in scale than Rick's restorations and operates in a space that is adjacent to his original craft, without requiring the overhead and staffing that a full restoration shop demanded. The laser-cut metal work in particular connects to the metal artistry skills he developed over decades, allowing him to keep working with the materials he loves while operating at a scale that does not depend on television revenue to be financially viable. He has also written a book called Classic Soda Machines, which reflects the deep, genuine passion for vintage Americana that was always the actual foundation of his career. The book is not a television tie-in or a marketing exercise. It is the kind of project someone does when they care about a subject for its own sake and want to document something they consider worth preserving. His estimated net worth sits at around $2 to $2.5 million, which reflects the income from the television years combined with the restoration business at its peak, but is modest compared to what other reality television personalities from the same era have been able to build through aggressive branding and merchandise strategies. Rick Dale never pursued that kind of expansion, and the relatively modest scale of his post-television life reflects the fact that he was always more interested in the work than in the business of being famous for doing it. He still has his car collection, including his beloved 1951 Ford F-100 truck that appeared on the show after the camera crew spotted him working on it privately and asked to document the process. The truck broke down during filming, and the breakdown became part of what aired, which was the kind of genuine, unscripted moment that made American restoration feel honest compared to shows that controlled every variable. He remains active on social media and engages with fans who still remember the show with warmth. The American restoration community has not disappeared, and the reruns continue to find new viewers who discover the show years after it ended. Which part of his story surprised you most? What show do you think replaced American restorations after it ended? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.